So our last study today, we went and looked at Daniel chapter 12, and that was in preparation for what we're getting ready to study here. Daniel 12 was in preparation. So we saw Daniel was a sealed and closed book. We saw that Daniel prophesied of the time of trouble such as never was, of the rise of the holy people that were going to teach righteousness on the earth in the last days. He prophesied about the first and second resurrection. He prophesied about the rise of the abomination that maketh desolate, which is the Roman Catholic Church. And so we saw that, but also we saw that Daniel's prophecies were going to be closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Well, as we looked at the seven churches, the seven seals, and now we're in the seven trumpets, we have come to the conclusion that in 1844, the Messiah entered into the most holy place of the sanctuary in the third heaven, that he entered into that place to cleanse that sanctuary, which is the original sanctuary, from all the sins of the children of Israel. He went in there in 1844 to start that process. Also, he went in there to perfect the 144,000, because that sanctuary service is a service that causes moral and spiritual perfection upon his chosen people at the end of the time in which we live. Okay, I'm just you right. So when we studied that's what the purpose of that is to take sin off of his people permanently take sin off of us, cause us to have a taste and a want of righteousness, and cause his spirit of righteousness to rest on us permanently. That is what that sanctuary service is all about. And so and that's why that year was so important, because that was the year that began. It was supposed to be done quickly. It was supposed to be done in a year. And then the return of the Messiah would come 5 years after that, which was 1849. But we know that did not happen, that there was a delay. And the reason, of course, there was a delay is because the 144,000 were not prepared. And though the angel that came to seal the 144,000 came down, went through the exercises of coming down to the earth with the seal to place the Father's seal on 144,000, but there was no 144,000. And then we read, when we studied Jeremiah last night, how the Most High told the prophet that before you were formed in the womb, I called you and ordained you a prophet to the nation. In such a same way, before the 144,000 were in the womb, they had already been called and chosen by the Most High to be the prophets at the end of time, to be those that preach and teach the word of righteousness from the Most High at the end of time where we live, before they were even thought about by what would have been their great grandparents or their great great grandparents. They were already called and chosen by the Most High. So 1844 was showing that was the sixth church, the sixth seal, and now the sixth trumpet. So now we're in the sixth trumpet, and I said to you in the beginning that under the sixth trumpet, more activity happens than any other trumpet, because it is in that trumpet that the 144,000 are brought forth. And that's where we live right now. We're in the time of the sixth church, the sixth seal, the sixth trumpet. That's where we live right now. Okay? What's ahead of us is the seventh church, the seventh seal, the seventh trumpet. And that's not too far off. And we can know the greatest sign. If anybody asks you, what is the sign? What is the sign that shows us that the Messiah's return is near? The greatest sign is the development of the 144,000. You are the sign. You hear what I'm saying? You hear what I'm saying? You're the sign. The brothers that are learning this word, the brothers that are waking up as to who they are, that's the sign. That's the greatest sign right now. It's not what the Pope is doing. It's not what the government is doing. That's the greatest sign. The awakening of the Israelite nation is the sign. Okay, that's the sign. And as I said, there are people in the earth that are in power now, the Eurocentric cultured power, the white privileged power they may not understand fully the prophecies that we're studying here, but they can feel it in the air. They know something is happening. They can see that there's a change in the air, that things are changing. Because as we said, as the awakening gains strength, which is prophesied by the Most High, as the awakening of the Israelite nation, of the men, the so-called African Americans, the lowest rung of society, as the awakening is happening among them, that is the beginning of the destruction of the Gentile empire. Destruction of their empires is at hand because of the awakening, because of the anointing, as the Bible says, from the Most High. So we needed to look at Daniel chapter 12 to begin to understand these things, because Daniel and Revelation are linked. And what we're going to see in chapter 10 is the unsealing, the opening of the book of Daniel. I want to make sure you heard me. What we're going to see in Revelation chapter 10 is the unsealing, the opening of the book of Daniel, which began after 1844. Okay? So let's take a look at this. Daniel chapter 10. Revelation chapter 10. Revelation chapter 10. Now, we looked in chapter 9 where the sixth trumpet started, and we saw all kind of violence. We saw all kind of people, looks like beings were coming out of the four wind angels that were bound up in the great river Euphrates, and they were going to destroy the third part of men, and they had power in their mouth and in their tails. And yet, though they brought this power of in mouth and tail, there was no repentance among the people. And that's what we're seeing today. Though error, error, error is rampant in all areas of society, nobody's repentant. Huh? All of these Christian churches, all of these Muslim places, all these places, nobody's repentant to the Creator. Nobody's surrendering themselves to Him for His honor and glory. Nobody is seeking to be one with His covenant. Nobody is doing that. Okay? Nobody's doing that. And that's what the Bible said. They repented not of their murders, sorceries, fornication, thefts, people going for self. Isn't that what we're seeing? People going for self. Everybody's going for self. Okay? Everybody's about the money, about the power, about what they can buy with cars and houses and money, and, all the lust of this world. So let's look at Daniel. Excuse me, I keep saying Daniel. Revelation chapter 10. Revelation chapter 10. I'm going to read from verse 1. Let's start at verse 1. Revelation chapter 10 and verse 1. That's true and partially not true, because people do have faith, but they don't have true faith, right? They have faith in man. They have faith in man's institutions. They have faith in man and their ability to become wealthy, rich, powerful. They have faith in these things, but they don't have faith. They don't have their trust in the Creator. That's at all. No, not at all. And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. That's right. So look at this. This mighty angel that came down from heaven, first of all, he was clothed with a cloud. He had a rainbow over his head. Wait a minute. Where did we read about a rainbow in the book of Revelation? Do y'all remember? We read something about a rainbow. We read something about a rainbow. Okay? That's right. Thank you, Sister Kimmy. Sister Kimmy's paying attention. Chapter 4. Exactly. Chapter 4, we saw a rainbow. Where did we see the rainbow in chapter 4? We saw it above the Father's throne. We saw it above the Father's throne. A rainbow above the Father's throne. Let's take a look at it. Revelation chapter 4. Revelation chapter 4. Verse 3. Revelation chapter 4, verse 3. Notice what it says. And he that sat was to look upon like a jasper stone and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne. and in sight like unto an emerald. So the Father had a rainbow over his throne. This angel had an appearance, like the Bible says, he was clothed with a cloud. His clothes was a cloud, and he had a rainbow upon his head. His face was like the sun. So this being is very closely aligned with the Father. Who would this be that's very closely aligned with the Father, a mighty angel, which is different from the other ones that Daniel saw? And he had his face as the sun and his feet as pillars of fire. Who would this be? This is the Messiah. That's right. This is the Messiah right here. He's coming in this form. This is the Messiah. Okay? We have to understand, you cannot see the third heaven. Angels can come among us, both evil angels and holy angels, and you may not see them. That means they can live in dimensions that we can't even understand, right? They can live in dimensions that we can't even understand. They can take on different forms, right? They might appear as a man. They might appear, they might appear as a man. They might appear as a poor man, a rich man, a woman. They could appear as anything. We don't even know. So here's Messiah. He's coming now. In the beginning, he had on the priestly garb. He had on a priestly robe, and he was hard to look upon as this one now. So this mighty angel came from heaven, clothed with the rainbow upon his head. Face was like the sun, feet as pillars of fire. This is the Messiah, which is the same as it was in Daniel chapter 12. Well, let's continue. Revelation 10 and verse 2. Revelation 10 and verse 2. And he had in his hand a little book. And he set his right foot upon the sea and his left foot on the earth. Now, in Revelation chapter 5, we were told that Messiah took a book out of the Father's hand, a book that was sealed with 7 seals. But this is not that book. This says this is a little book. It specifically tells us it's not a big book. It's not a thick book. It's a little book. And he had it in his hand. And it was open. A little book that was open. And he set his right foot upon the sea and his left foot on the earth. Now, I would be guessing if I told you why he had 1 foot on the sea and 1 foot on the earth. I'd be guessing. So I don't want to guess. And I don't want to say what it means because I'm not sure. But it's obviously what it says. He had 1 foot on the sea, 1 foot on the earth. Okay? Messiah came in an awesome appearance. He had a little book in his hand. He had 1 foot on the sea and 1 foot on the earth. So far, we got that? Okay, verse 3. And he cried with a loud voice as when a lion roareth. And when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. Let's stop right here. So we now know it's the Messiah. Because the voice was like we know he sounded like a trumpet. We know he sounded like the voice of many waters or a multitude. But this was a lion. Well, who is the Messiah? Is he not also called the Lion of the tribe of Judah? Wait, is he not also called the Lion of the tribe of Judah? So this one cried with a loud voice like a lion roaring. And when he had cried, 7 thunders also uttered their voices. Wait a minute. The lion roared and then 7 thunders came. Well, let me ask you a question. Who is the 7 thunders? I see Barthaman already answered. Who is the 7 thunders that's uttering their voice when the Messiah came with this little book on his hand and he cried like when a lion roared? What is this? That's the Father. So Messiah came and said something, and then the Father said something. Okay, so the Messiah came down. He had 1 foot on the sea, 1 foot on the earth. He had a little book in his hand. He was awesome in his appearance, and he roared like a lion. And when he roared like a lion, the Father answered him. Okay? Everybody got that so far? So he roared like the lion, and the Father answered him. Okay, let's look at verse 4. So Yochanan is looking at all this. And when the seven thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write. So apparently he heard a statement, like he recognized something that the seven thunders said. It wasn't just noise, like he caught a message, a communication from the seven thunders. And he was about to write down that communication. And then it says, and I heard a voice from heaven saying, seal up those things which the seven thunders uttered and write them not. So he heard the seven thunders say something. The Father said something. He gave a communication. And Yochanan was about to write the communication that the Father gave when Yahushua roared. John was about to write this down, and a voice from heaven came and said to him, don't write that. Don't write that. Okay? Don't write that. Okay. Let's continue. Verse 5 and 6. And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea. By the way, the word angel means messenger. Messenger. Now, the Most High can send anybody as a messenger. He can send Gabriel. He can send Messiah. Anybody he wants can be a messenger. He can send the prophet as a messenger. So if this was a heavenly one, obviously, because this Bible says he came down from heaven. And it's a mighty one. Bible says he came down from heaven. He was mighty. And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven and swear by him that liveth forever and ever, who created the heaven and the things that therein are, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things that therein are, that there should be time no longer. Okay, wait a minute. So the Messiah made a declaration, and he swore by his Father's name. There's none higher than the Father. He swore by him that liveth forever and ever. He swore by the Father's name, and he said, who created heaven, the earth, the sea. He swore by the creator of all things, which maybe is why he had his foot on the earth and on the sea, maybe, because he's covering all things that his Father created, right? He said there should be time no longer. Now, that's telling you something. He's saying there should be time no longer. Well, at the very least, right? We know that 1844 is now, from that point on, we at the time of the end. We know that, right? Because he said there should be time no longer, right? We know that. So from 1844, we know that this is a time of the end. We know that, okay? We don't have to wait. The time of the end is not in the future. You ever hear some people say, well, Revelation's in the future. It's not now. That's for people that don't know the book of Revelation. That's for the heathen. That's not for the Israelite nation. This book is our roadmap right now for us to learn. And so he said, there should be time no longer. We're at the time of the end. Started in 1844. And now 144,000 are already being groomed and trained. So now we know we're at the real, very end. Very end. Okay? It's like, you know, I do listen to 90s and 80s rap. I have to admit it. I do listen to 80s and 90s rap. And there was this rapper that said, this is for those that fear to hear what is real. Today is the tomorrow you should have feared yesterday. I found that to be but that's the truth about what we're talking about. Today is the tomorrow you should have feared yesterday. Today is the future. That's right. Today is the future. So we're in the time of the end. So now he said there should be time no longer. All right. Let's look at verse 7. Revelation chapter 10 and verse 7. Revelation 10:7. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of Yahweh should be finished, as he declared to his servants, the prophets. So, okay, let's stop here. So you remember, Father said something Yochanan was about to write it, and he was told, don't write that. But he said, now in verse 7, he said, in the days of the seventh angel, that is the seventh trumpet, when the seventh trumpet sounds, this mystery, what the Father said, is going to be finished. In other words, it's going to be revealed. When it says finished, that means it's not going to be a mystery anymore. Okay? So let's go back now. We talked about this. What is the great mystery that Messiah told us that only the Father knew, that nobody else knows? And he said, this is the one mystery that he told us. One thing he said, that's right. When is Messiah returning? Exactly. The day and the hour when Messiah is returning. That's the mystery. So he's telling us that in the days of the seventh trumpet, when the seventh trumpet begins to sound, he's going to reveal to us the day and hour of his return. Now, like I said, we're already starting to get our eyes peeled open little by little with regard to this, because like I said, we already know now the return of Messiah is going to be in the autumn. It's going to be in the day of the Feast of Ingathering. We know that. It's going to be in the time of the Feast of Ingathering. Okay? We know it's going to be this 7th month, the 15th day of the month. We know it's going to be at midnight. But we don't know what year it is. We don't know what year it is. Okay? But he says when the seventh angel begins to sound, when that trumpet begins to sound, the seventh trumpet, that's when everything is going to be finished. He's going to let us know what's going on at that time. Going to let us know what's going on. How will we know that the seventh trumpet begins to sound? How will we know? Well, first, we've already alluded to the fact that the 144,000 are a sign, right? So when you start hearing people start to be healed, you start hearing people preaching this truth with a power that has not been seen before, you start to see crazy things happening, you start to see laws being passed and people getting warned by the 144,000 to come out of these churches and institutions because plagues are about to fall on them like they did in ancient Egypt, and your game is getting ready to be destroyed. When you start seeing that, you know. When that word finished, when that is done, when we are no longer preaching that, but we're beginning now to scatter and to hide in woods and in deserts and in mountains, in desolate places, when you see that, you know the seventh trumpet is now getting ready to sound. You hear what I'm saying? So when you see now, when it's time, when the Most High, when you can't work, you can't buy or sell anymore, you can't stay in the home that you're used to anymore, you got to leave. And the Spirit of the Most High by his angel is guiding you where you got to go. He's guiding you. Don't you worry about where you're going to go. Don't worry about that, because all you got to worry about is keeping your connection with the Father. You got to keep your connection with the Father. The Father is going to send the angel through the Messiah. The angel going to tell you when and where and what. He's going to make the way where you have to go. He will tell you. Okay, he will show you. That's no problem. The key thing is for you to keep your connection with the Father, to keep seeking to glorify the Father, to keep seeking to give honor and obedience to the Father, to keep seeking the Father's spirit of perfect righteousness, the Father's spirit of perfect righteousness, which he promised to reign on his people. So you keep that. He will take care of all this other stuff. He will take care. He's just letting us know what's going to happen because he's faithful, because we're the apple of his eye, because he said nothing he does except he reveals it to his servants, the prophets. So he's showing us what's going to happen. But we're not to try to act like it's under our control. It's not. It's under the Father's control. Okay? It's under the Father's control. Not under our control. And when the Father says a word, it's going to come to pass. All we need to do is trust it, believe it, expect it, because he said it. Period. We don't have to try to make it come to pass. All we have to do is trust it, believe it, accept it, embrace it, because he said it, because we know it's going to happen. Okay? So here, in the voice of the seventh angel, that's when the mystery is going to be finished. Each one of us, the Father is going to reveal to us the day and hour of the return. We're going to know it's this year. If it's this year, we're going to know it's this year. And we're going to be knowing that our deliverance is soon. He's going to let us know. Okay? Going to let us know. when the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of Yahweh should be finished, as he had declared to his servants, the prophets. Now, you say, where in the prophets did he declare this? Several places. You look in Joel, chapter 3, you look in Isaiah chapter 30. In fact, let's take a look at some of those. Let's get a couple of witnesses as to the prophets saying this. It was not recognized by the people, but this is what's going on. Notice again, Isaiah chapter 30. Isaiah chapter 30. We'll come right back to Revelation. Isaiah chapter 30. Let's take a look at this. Isaiah chapter 30. I'm going to begin Isaiah chapter 30. I'm going to begin reading. Let's see. I'm going to start at verse 27. I'm going to go from verse 27 down to verse, let's see, 31. From 27 down to 31. Notice what it says. Isaiah chapter 30 from verse 27 down to verse 31. Notice what it says. Behold, the name of Yahweh cometh from far, burning with his anger, and the burden thereof is heavy. His lips are full of indignation, and his tongue as a devouring fire. His breath as an overflowing stream shall reach to the midst of the neck to sift the nations with the sieve of vanity. And there shall be a bridle in the jaws of the people, causing them to err. Ye shall have a song as in the night when a holy solemnity is kept, and gladness of heart as when one goeth with the pipe to come into the mountain of Yahweh, to the mighty one of Israel. And Yahweh shall cause his glorious voice to be heard. There it is. And shall show the lighting down of his arm and the indignation of his anger, with the flame of devouring fire, with scattering and tempest and hailstone. For through the voice of Yahweh shall the Assyrian be beaten down, which smote with the rod. See? So the voice of Yahweh shall be heard by who? By you and me. It will be heard by his glorious voice is going to be heard by the people. You see what I'm saying? So it's been shown to the prophets that this would happen, but we didn't recognize it because it wasn't that time yet. But now it is time. So he's showing us. Let me see where else. Let me get us another. Let's see. Let's look at Joel chapter 3. Joel chapter 3. Let's look at that. Joel chapter 3. Right. Joel chapter 3. Notice again, Joel chapter 3 from verse 16. Verse 16 and 17. Notice what it says. Joel chapter 3, verse 16 and 17. Yahweh also shall roar out of Zion, and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. But Yahweh will be the hope of his people, and the strength of the children of Israel. So shall they know that I am Yahweh your Elohim, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy, and there shall no strangers pass through her anymore. So again, his voice is going to be heard. He's going to be the strength of his people. See, it's going to encourage us when we hear the voice of the Father. You see what happened, brothers and sisters? Remember now, the Father uttered his voice when Messiah was on the earth a couple of times. And one time they said it thundered, right? But Messiah understood what the voice said. Messiah knew what it said. Yochanan, who heard it, knew what it said because he wrote it down. So what I'm saying is that we're going to hear the day and hour by a thunder. Listen, it's going to be a thunder. It's going to be a thunderous voice, and we're going to understand it. Why would we understand it? Because the Spirit of the Father will allow us to understand it. Because we've been close to the Father, because we've been receiving Spirit of the Father. So when the Father utters his voice and it thunders, that's when you're going to know the seventh trumpet has sounded. He's going to give you the day and the hour. Now, I'm going to tell you something. When he gives it to us, right? Listen carefully now. When he gives it to us, it's going to be the same year that he's going to come. It's not going to be like you hear it and then 3 years from now he's going to come. It's not going to be like that. You're going to hear it and it's going to be that very year that it's going to happen. How do I know that? Look at, watch this. Remember how we studied now the Day of Atonement, right? Remember how we studied the Day of Atonement? And we studied the Day of Atonement. And let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Are you ready? Here we go. Here go the quiz. Y'all been doing good on the quizzes today. I got to commend y'all. Y'all been doing good on the quizzes today. Okay. The Day of Atonement is on the 10th day of the 7th month. Okay? Y'all can hear me, right? Testing 1, 2, 3. The Day of Atonement is on the 10th day. I'm giving you some hints. The Day of Atonement is on the 10th day of the 7th month. That's the Hebrew year. Okay? The 10th day of the Hebrew year. Now, before that Day of Atonement, there's a feast and there's a convocation. There's 2 things that happen before that Day of Atonement, in the months before and the days before. So tell me, what feast happens before the Day of Atonement on the 7th month and the 10th day? And what convocation, what holy convocation happens before the Day of Atonement? What happens before the Day of Atonement? What holy convocation happens and what feast happens? Talk to me now. There's a feast before the Day of Atonement. It's months before. I'm going to give you another hint. It's not right before, like it's months before. But right before there's another, that's right, Pentecost. Bathaman, praise the Most High Yah. That's exactly right. The Pentecost comes, that's the feast that comes before the Day of Atonement is Pentecost. Day of Atonement is not a feast, but then before the Day of Atonement and after Pentecost, there's this other holy convocation. It's not a feast. People call it a feast, but it's not a feast. There's a holy convocation that takes place, a day that they make a Sabbath before the Day of Atonement. That's right. It's the sounding of the trumpets. That is right. On the first day of the 10th month. So wait a minute. Listen carefully now. Listen carefully. This is the interesting thing. We know that now the Messiah is going to return in the 7th Hebrew month. It's going to return the 7th month. We don't know what day. We know what day. It's the 15th day of the 7th Hebrew month. We don't know what year. We know that the Father is going to give us the sign, the thunder sign, before that, right before he comes, right? We know that the trumpet sounds in the first day of the 7th month, right? Here we're studying, what are we studying right now? We're studying 7 trumpets. Are we not? We're studying 7 trumpets, right? So when the 7th trumpet is sounding, you're going to hear a voice of thunder. So you know it's going to be probably a matter of maybe a couple of weeks at the most. It's a couple of weeks, maybe it's going to be days before the return of the Messiah that he's going to show us this mystery. Right? It's not going to be like you got to wait years and you tell everybody he's coming on this date. It's not going to happen that way. You're going to be fleeing. And I'm going to be fleeing. We're going to be in wilderness areas living on water and manna from the Father. And people are going to be searching for us to kill us. And a couple of weeks before, a matter of days before, he's going to give us the sign with the voice of the trumpet. We're going to recognize it because we, being his children, are going to recognize our Father's voice. And he's going to tell us that this is the year that he's coming now. So we already know the day. We already know the hour. We just don't know the year. And when we hear that voice, we know that's the year. We recognize the Father's voice. See? And so that's why now it is important that we get close to our Father, that we study his word, that we pray to him, that we trust in him, that we have no doubts about the Father at all, about his word, about his guidance in our lives, about anything that he does, that we trust the Father completely. Because then we'll get to know the Father and we'll be close enough so that when he gives that trumpet sound, to everybody else in the earth, they're not going to recognize it. To them, it's just going to sound like thunder. right? To them, it's just going to sound like thunder. But to us, we're going to hear the Father's voice in that thunder, and we're going to hear what he's telling us. The people are going to think we are crazy, but we're going to know we just heard the Father's voice. And he's telling us he's coming. And we're going to have hope at that time. Okay? Praise the Most High. We're going to be living outside, and we're going to have hope. And hope maketh not ashamed. Praise the Most High. Hope maketh not ashamed. So that's what's going to happen. That's right. But the Israelites are going to know what he's saying exactly. And why? Because the Father's going to cause us to know. See? Not because we're smart, not because we have such high degrees of intelligence or IQ. No, it's because we know the Father, and he knows us by name. And he's got a new name for us, which the Messiah is going to give us. But he's going to let us know. That's how you're going to know. Okay? That's how you're going to know. Now, let's continue. This little book that the Messiah had in his hand, let's look more about this. Verse 8, Revelation chapter 10, verse 8. Revelation chapter 10, verse 8. That's exactly right. That's what the Messiah said about himself. He said, his sheep don't know the voice of strangers, right? They know the shepherd's voice, but they don't know the voice of strangers. See, when you close to Messiah and you start wanting to be like Messiah, and you start wanting to be obedient like Messiah, and you start wanting to close to the Father like Messiah, you're going to know who Messiah is. You're going to know when you hear Messiah's spirit in another human being, you're going to recognize it. And somebody that's trying to pawn themselves off as representing the Messiah, and they faking the funk and they fronting, you're going to be able to recognize it, because you're going to know the Messiah's voice. You're going to know it just like you're going to know the Father's voice. You hear me? You're going to know the Father's voice. You're going to know it. No question. Notice again. Revelation 10, verse 8. And the voice which I heard from heaven spake unto me again and said, Go and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth. So Yochanan is being told, go take this little book that's open out of the hand of the angel. Go take it. Okay? Okay? So he's being told to go get that little book. You're following so far? Okay, so he's being told, go get the little book. Take the little book out of the angel's hand. That mighty one that's so powerful. Take that little book out of his hand. Go get it. Go get it. Go get it. Okay, so now here's this little man, because compared to that angel, we're gonna be little, right? We'll be standing like midgets next to him. So we're walking up to this giant, bright being, this majestic giant being, and we're gonna ask him for this little book. We're gonna ask him for this little book. Okay, so here's your Yochanan, verse 9. And I went unto the angel and said unto him, Give me the little book. And he said unto me, Take it and eat it. Take it and eat it up. And it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. So wait a minute. Before we continue, have you ever read anywhere in the Bible where a prophet was told to eat the words? Eat, literally take a book and eat it? Yes, you did read that in the Bible, didn't you? Where did you read that in the Bible? You definitely read it in the Bible. Where did you read that in the Bible before? No, not Daniel. Not Daniel. Daniel wasn't told to eat a little book, not that I remember. But what? But where there was a place in the Bible where the prophet was told, "Go take this book and eat it." It is in there. You're absolutely right. All right, I'll tell you. It's in the next book we get ready to study after we study the book of Revelation. It's in the book of Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel. Let's take a look at the prophet Ezekiel. And let's start at chapter 2, verse 8, and go to chapter 3. Go to chapter 3, verse 3. Okay? Chapter 2, verse 8 to chapter 3, verse 3. Okay? Ready? Here's Ezekiel, the prophet. But thou, son of man, hear what I say unto thee. Be not thou rebellious like that rebellious house. Open thy mouth and eat what I give thee. And when I looked, behold, an hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein. And he spread it before me, and it was written within and without. And there were written therein lamentations and mourning and woe. Moreover, he said unto me, Son of man, eat that thou findest. Eat this roll, and go and speak unto the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he caused me to eat that roll. And he said unto me, Son of man, cause thy belly to eat, and fill thy bowels with this roll that I give thee. Then did I eat it, and it was in my mouth as honey for sweetness. Very similar to what Yakanan said. So he was getting the word of the Most High, and he was eating it, and he was going to go speak the word that he was eating. Does that make sense, brothers and sisters? So the Most High gave him his word in the form of a book, and he said, eat this word. And when he ate it, then he went off and he spoke the word. Okay? Y'all following that so far? So this was the Most High's word that was given to Ezekiel in the form of a book. When he ate that book, he spoke forth the word. Now let's go back to Revelation chapter 10. This little book, there's a little book. And Yakanan was told, go take the book. And when he went to the angel said, okay, here, take the book and eat it. And he went to eat it. And when he ate it, he said it was in his mouth sweet as honey, but it made his belly bitter. What book was it that is the word of the Most High that had been sealed up and is now being opened in 1844, that the prophet was told, eat this book and go prophecy? What book is that? What book is that? There's only one book. That's right. It's the book of Daniel. There's only one book in the entire Bible that was sealed, and that is now being opened. There's only one book that is sealed and was and said it's going to be open in the time of the end. It's the only book. It's the book of Daniel. And Daniel is a prophetic book, is it not? Is not Daniel a book of prophecy? Was not Daniel a prophet? Did he not receive visions of prophecy and was told to write down what he saw? Didn't he do that? Yes. Well, let's continue. Revelation chapter 10 and verse 10 and verse 11. Revelation chapter 10, verse 10 and verse 11. And I took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it up. And it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. And he said unto me, thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. So now the book is a book of prophecy. How do we know that? Because he was eating this book and he was told after he ate it, he's going to prophesy again. So we know now this is the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel was sealed. And now it's being unsealed. 1844. It's being unsealed. It's being unsealed. And it's being unsealed, and 144,000 are being given its meaning. The book of Daniel being given its meaning. 144,000 are studying this book and being given its meaning. Perhaps, what do y'all think? Should we read Daniel first before we read Ezekiel, or should we go right into Ezekiel? What do y'all think? Should we go and study Daniel before we study Ezekiel? Or should we go right into Ezekiel? Or should we study Ezekiel and then study Daniel? What do y'all think? Yes, yes, yes. All right, we'll study Ezekiel. My wife is whispering to me Ezekiel. So we'll study Ezekiel, then we'll come back and look at Daniel again. Okay. But this is the little book that was in the angel's hand. It's the book of Daniel. And now it is for us now to eat this book. It's for us to study this book. It's for us to study this book and to reveal what the Most High shows us from this book of Daniel. Praise the Most High. So we're going to study the book of Daniel, but we're going to study Ezekiel first. We're going to study Ezekiel first. I believe I am being led that way. So we're going to study Ezekiel first. Then we're going to come back and study the book of Daniel. Okay, so we'll study Ezekiel and then we'll study Daniel. So we're going to stop here right now. We finished chapter 10. I want to save the two witnesses for a whole study of itself. So we're going to study the two witnesses the next time. We're going to study that the next time, the two witnesses. Yeah, yeah, it's been a long time, and things have changed since the last time